This is Joe Marley. Joe is Director of Bryson Care. And to finish up today, I was interested to get your thoughts, not just on what we've heard today, but your reflections of what the last 3 years have been like. And my first question, Joe, is have we ended up where you'd hoped we would have ended up?
I think so, Declan. I think we've ended up at the end of something, but at the beginning of something else. We've crossed Northern Ireland into Donegal. We've had conversations with people who would consider themselves from rural backgrounds and worried about rural issues. We've talked to people on the coastline who've been worried about marine issues, and we've heard about Brexit from those areas. Not so much from the city areas. We have a whole completely different set of preoccupations. We've heard from different ethnic minorities. We've heard obviously from Protestant and Catholic communities. We've heard from women, we've heard from men, we've heard from young people and older people. So we've done a lot of listening, we've done a lot of talking, we've built, I think, in many places, a lot of trust. But for me, the next phase, if you want, of what I think can come from very rich soil, as Eugen would call it, is action.
All right. So what is that action? What are you going to do about it?
I think we need to work together, probably with government, but with other stakeholders. We have talked to church groups and business leaders as well, and I think we have to identify a task, or a couple of tasks, real, tangible, measurable things that we think we can do together for Northern Ireland and the border regions. Can
you give me an example of, not something that you will necessarily do, because it would be unfair to hold you to that at this stage, but can you give us a tangible example of something you'd like to do? What kind of thing, practical thing, would come from the dialogues?
Well, I mean, you heard from a few of the contributors today about moving away from this zero sum and looking at something that we can coalesce around that would motivate all of us. It could well be something to do with our health and well-being. We've heard from Melinda, and she's given us significant warnings if we don't look after ourselves and our mental well-being, our physical well-being, that like a lot of the globe, we could find ourselves in trouble. So maybe we need to think, well, okay, if we need to do something that will benefit us and move us from, and stop us, I think, from getting trapped in further trauma because of COVID, maybe we should look at something like that. I mean, it's a bit vague, but
well, and that's always the danger in this area, that it does remain vague. Maybe it's easier to talk about what has happened, because that's a matter of record. How long have you been involved in this kind of field?
I've been involved
that long. Okay.
I've been involved in social care very
well, my question is, have you seen significant change? This is Northern Ireland. This is funded by Peace IV. There was Peace III, II and I. Before that, over £1 billion of investment from the EU, as we mentioned earlier. Have you seen substantive change in Northern Ireland? Are we coming to this with already a body of work behind us, a body of success?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think Peace I, II and III, well, the very early peace projects were about stopping violence. Mm-hmm. And that we've been, I think, very, very successful. But, I mean, I think there are a number of initiatives, neighbourhood renewals, urban villages, where people from all backgrounds have come together with government to look at economic renewal, and I think there are exemplars there that we could use to build on. Yeah.
Let's talk about the people who were mentioned a few times today, which are our political leaders. How engaged they have been, how engaged they might be going forward. You have some thoughts on that?
I think, yeah, I mean, obviously there was a challenge from the community contributors to politicians, and I think that's right and proper. However, I do think that, in a sense, we have a responsibility, I mean, all of us have a responsibility to give permission to politicians, because politicians will maybe be nervous about change if they feel they can't bring their electorate with them. So if we change our demands from our politicians, most likely they will change. So it's a sort of symbiotic relationship, I suppose, and it's going to take work on both sides.
People are using the opportunity now to ask you questions that they have in front of the camera, so we might throw a couple of them at you, see how we go. But before we do that, you can add that in if you want on the Ask the Questions tab. We'll very quickly. We have a little bit of time in hand, so we might do that. You can get your questions to Joe. But what other reflections have you had on what we've been hearing today?
I mean, I know that Eugen spent today really laying out his theoretical framework, and tomorrow he'll put a lot more story to that, narrative to that, which will make it feel real. But I think even today, I love the idea of the pot plant. I love the idea of, particularly coming from a rural island, I love the idea of being nourished from the earth. And I love the idea of even going on holiday, you take your pot plant, don't you? You know, you make sure you've got something from home.
Yeah.
Not so much like in the old days when you took your potatoes and your smash and your pots and pans, but you still need something that grounds you.
It is a good analogy though, isn't it? Because anyone who's tried to get soil off a plant, there's no getting rid of all of it. It may mostly be gone, but you can't fully cleanse yourself of the previous soil.
Absolutely, and nor would you want to.
Quite
which
right.
I think is his point. You know, yeah, tradition's good, it's great, it does ground us, but listen, culture has to grow from that. It's not the same thing.
We also heard about the importance of looking after ourselves before we start to look after others with Melinda.
Sure, I think that's a major issue for us, and certainly, excuse me, our experience of the pandemic and supporting community through the Bryson Fund and through government initiatives like the Warm Well Connected Fund from the Department for Communities has shown us that actually community leaders did rise to the challenge, but they rose to the challenge a lot of the times at the expense of themselves. You know, they had families who were sick, they sometimes were sick themselves through COVID. They had, as you rightly pointed out, Declan, they had neighbours rapping on the door at 10 o'clock at night because of some emergency. And you know, they were really nourishing themselves. I mean, I know of one group where we talked about it a lot on Red Bull, because the Red Bull was giving them the energy and stuff. So there is a real need to help people in community to really take that agenda seriously. I
think that's very interesting because, and maybe it's a Northern Irish thing, who knows, but a lot of people will hear this idea of going, you know, self-care and protect yourself, and can't ever really envisage themselves having a knock on the front door from a neighbour going, if you could just give me 10 minutes because I'm self-caring at the moment. You know, that kind of seems a bit unrealistic to many,
Sure.
But there is a kernel of truth there, and everyone can apply it to themselves in their own life in whatever way works for them.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that it's the same with government officials, people like myself in organisations where, you know, we have really had difficulty punctuating between Zooms and calls and decisions and family and life, and it has been difficult. So, you know, I think between all of us who are stakeholders in building this new culture for Northern Ireland, we really do need to think how we're going to take care of ourselves for the long haul.
Do you want some of the unplanned questions now?
Oh.
Not that they were planned, but as in, we'll go for it. Again, you can get in very, very quickly in the last few minutes. It's just below the window you're watching me on. There's a blue tab saying ask a question. Tap on that and you can put your question. It'll arrive here. Des says, where does the Bryson Group stand on the review of the Human Rights Act put forward by the UK government?
It's not something that we have discussed as the Bryson group, so I really can't speak for the organisation, but I think we certainly would always uphold the rights of citizens and would stand against anything that might dilute that.
Paddy says, Linda was talking about tennis and Tenerife and how that makes you feel better. Paddy says, thank you for the excellent trauma presentation. My wife and I have been chatting about this in regards to anger. She finds it good when she is angry to do the ironing while listening to music. Far cry from tennis and Tenerife, but whatever works for you. Khalid says, because dialogue in closed rooms with a limited number of interested people does not solve any issue, the important thing here is to involve the largest number of people in various activities. He says the best examples are sport or music or culture, but that really is the challenge now, isn't it? The 2,600, it's not that you'd like them to speak to 10 and for them to speak to 10, they kind of have to in order for this to work and to feed out.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be a ripple effect, and it has to be, you know, size and scale is tricky. You really have to have the opportunity to build the trust, to build the confidence, to build a mutual understanding. So large scale doesn't always allow itself to that, but I do think, you know, systematically and systemically, we have to build and challenge, I think, as well. You know, it's one thing, and right, you know, to have a conversation in a closed room, you need to carry that on through your everyday life and challenge where you think it's needed.
Final one. A lot has been said about compassion today. How could this concept filter practically within the community sector? Just your thoughts on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, if just go back to the COVID example, I do think there were examples of compassion where people did go out of their way to help others, sometimes people they didn't even know. It's quite interesting that our experience was that community leaders who got involved with us with the provision of COVID relief started off knowing pockets of their community, but not the whole area, and ended up knowing a lot of people in it. So I think the compassion's there, the opportunities to show that we have to create.
Yeah, and I think if the pandemic has done anything, I think it's really put all that goodwill that remains in communities into the spotlight. I don't think we will have gotten through it, or would have gotten through it in the same way had there not been that kind of grassroots level of compassion and care. Joe, thanks very much. Have you enjoyed day one?
Thank you. I have thoroughly enjoyed day one, and I'm looking even more forward to day two.
You're coming back for day two?
Absolutely.
Good, I should hope so. Thank you very much.